everybody. Good afternoon. This is Keith Daly from Travillian, live from our headquarters in King of Prussia. I'm very, very happy today to have Monica Murthy with us. She is the partnership lead at Alloy. And Monica and I have had a few chats in the past couple months about the industry, and we have some mutual acquaintances. And thank you very much, Monica, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. Very excited.
So exciting news for you. It looks like you moved to Chicago, right? Recently?
I did.
From New York?
Made a mid-pandemic shift. I'd say one of the benefits of working in partnerships, which is part of our sales team, is we travel a lot for work. We're almost never in the office anyway.
Yeah,
So
Chicago is a good midway point, you know, between the West and the East. But your headquarters is New York, right?
Yes.
Alloy?
Yeah. Although it's actually been interesting moving out to Chicago. I grew up in New Jersey. We don't we have community banks in New Jersey, but I think the top tier institutions make the most appearances. Moving out here, you can see community banking, even within the
city. New Jersey's going through consolidation right now also. Big news last week or a couple weeks ago was Investors Bank in New Jersey was purchased. So that was one of the larger. One of the
last ones. Investors and Valley National are the only two that I remember.
Yeah. Ocean First. There's a couple Kearney, but I think Provident also. But yeah, there's been a lot of consolidation in the Northeast over the past 6 months or so. But really interested to learn more about your company, Alloy, kind of, and your background. Start off with your background. I know you are passionate about fintech, as we are, and banking, and your company Alloy sits in that similar space we do, between fintech, technology, and more traditional community banking. But what drew you to Alloy? And if you want to give us a brief description of your background, that'd be awesome too.
Yeah, absolutely. So I came from a little bit of a non-traditional background. I actually started out my career working with defense technology and international trade policy. And I made the switch to finance and fintech in about 2016, right when most top tier banks were actually starting innovation programs. And they were just starting to thinking about leveling up their technology, replacing legacy systems. So it was a really interesting time to get started in the space. I had originally been in government because I really wanted to make an impact with my work. Public service was something that always appealed to me. But as I thought about moving to the private sector, fintech kind of presented like a totally new angle on that mission. So within financial services, and I'd say, frankly, in the security space across different industries, there's this myth that you can either have a safe but really arduous process in place that's very high friction, or you can have a customer-focused experience with like a willy-nilly security protocol. And that was something I dealt with in some of my previous roles, thinking about kind of government-focused technology and trade policy. So what really stood out to me about Alloy is that they were founded on the premise of allowing institutions to do both. It's kind of a joke internally because our CEO's tagline is basically that you can be safe and seamless, quote unquote. Like safe and seamless is like really the phrase that we throw around on the day-to-day. And it's been exciting to work with customers who are really clearly excited about Alloy. They very easily see the value prop. I've worked with customers that have increased automation rates on identity verification by like 80% or more. One of my favorite stories is like a top tier institution that I was working with when I first started at Alloy. And the role I was in immediately prior to Alloy was working at the Barclays Rise platform. So, Barclays, very large institution, very heavy in the digital space. So I just started at Alloy and I was working with a community institution that was manually reviewing 80% of applicants because they hadn't figured out how to automate document verification.
Wow. Talk about a slow process.
Yes. Again, top tier institution, thousands of applications a month.
Yeah, you wouldn't think, you would think they would have everything kind of automated, either RPA or AI, but a lot of it is still very manual out there. And, I was on your website last night, going through your products. What makes your product different and more flexible and, able to integrate with current technology with community banks and credit unions, other financial institutions?
Absolutely. So I think that's actually where kind of my role in the partnerships front comes in.
Mm-hmm.
So partnerships is really central to Alloy because we want to be easily accessible to all of our clients. We don't want barriers to using Alloy, like not having an in-house development team, for example. So a
Yes.
lot of the work we do around partners is making ourselves accessible through a variety of channels. So we work with a lot of digital account opening providers. I know you've had people from the Mantle and NARMI teams
Yes.
speak with you before. They're great examples of some partners that we're integrated with. So we're really working on digital account opening providers and loan origination systems, making it easy for the bank to use Alloy without needing to facilitate a direct connection to us via our API. But then we're also thinking about kind of widening the scope of partnerships. So to actually take a step back, a little bit about Alloy. We think of ourselves as a one-stop shop for identity. So we have 3 products that we offer out in the market. Onboarding, so KYC, AML, and fraud detection at the point of bringing on a new customer. Transaction monitoring as kind of an ongoing BSA, AML, and fraud tool. So checking out people's transactions across credit, debit, ACH, wire, doing some really interesting things with like behavioral insights. And then the third is credit underwriting. So really hosting your entire credit model. And our goal is to essentially be the one place where you can manage the customer's identity and behaviors across their life cycle with you and across the different products that they use with you. So we really want to be as accessible as possible. We want to offer the ability to like dynamically change your workflow. Alloy is a no-code decisioning engine, among other things. So you're able to kind of look at your process and say, I want to reevaluate this every 6 months, and I want to make meaningful changes, and it's going to take me, a day to do so.
Yeah. So flexibility is really the key, and being, accessible, as you mentioned. A lot of these institutions don't have in-house development or in-house engineers, so making it easy and flexible for a community bank or a credit union to have your product there. And it's so important. Just from, you mentioned account opening. And we had a recent chat with Dion Lyle and his son, and Dion's a consultant, fintech consultant, has been in the business, 30 years, works with community banks. And his son is in college, working an internship for his father. And we had a conversation about what's important to generation, I guess they're called Z now, millennials, different, but speed and customer journey. They're not going to sit there and wait for an account to be opened. If it takes 30 steps in 2 hours, nope, they're going to move on. They want instantaneous decision making, and it sounds like Alloy can provide that. And then also, in this world of fake identities, and, digital risk, it's so important to have kind of that monitoring service. So it sounds like not only will you help with onboarding new customers, and from a identity point, you'll also keep, I guess, the risk profile going for those customers. So if there's a purchase or a withdrawal that doesn't make sense, maybe detection and fraud, is that something you provide?
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely looking at transactions that fall outside of the parameters that an institution is comfortable with. But some of our more creative customers are actually taking it a step further. So every time there's a change of, an email address or physical address within an existing account, they want to pull device metrics from the device that made that change and actually run that to see if, there was a potential account takeover scenario, for example.
Oh, wow. There you go. So you can tell if something was changed from a device that wasn't used in the past.
Exactly.
Gotcha. I'm constantly, and I've seen it on LinkedIn a lot more, I don't know if you have, getting kind of that second verification. So they'll send me a text message with a code. And I kind of like that, it makes me feel like there's an extra level of protection. I know I have it on there for PayPal and Venmo type stuff. It just gives me that extra layer. But security is just, it's everywhere. I mean, every day I'm reading about, cybersecurity, identity risk, fraud. There's a lot of money floating out there with, government programs, unemployment insurance, things like that. And identity has become such a huge issue. So what's different about your product? Does it take data from a lot of different sources? How do you in simplistic terms, I know you can go to the website and get more information, but how is it different than maybe some of your competitors or products out there right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I like to describe Alloy as part orchestration layer, part decisioning engine. And I think having those two things in concert in one platform is what makes us really unique. So you'll see a lot of products out there that say, we're leveraging data from all of these third-party providers, but you don't actually get to orchestrate any of that. You don't get to say, like, these are the products I want to use at this point in the process for fraud detection. This is the product I want to use for KYC. I want to add in these extra measures on top of all of that. You don't really get to look at it and move around the different products, understand what's coming back from those different vendors. What you typically get is like, here's the list of data products we're using, and here's the outcome that we've given you. So Alloy's really trying to open up that black box and create a lot more transparency in the industry. So most of our clients are actually using multiple different data products, let's say for a standard consumer verification. And the goal there is increased fraud detection because you're cross-referencing different databases. So we've run a lot of studies saying like the return on your investment is a lot higher when you add in like 3 to 5 data products. And we make it really easy to do so because we're actually reselling the third-party data to our clients. So they're not going out there to set up direct contracts or point integrations with any of those third parties. They just connect to Alloy's API, or in many cases, their digital account opening provider will connect to Alloy's API. And then we're calling all of the third-party services they've chosen to use within our one API call. So the customer calls Alloy once, we run out to all the different data services, bring the results back, aggregate it, and this is where the decisioning engine kicks in. We've codified the bank's verification rules. So they could say, any amount of red flags around device fidelity or around email fraud are automatically going to deny this applicant. On the flip side, if there's any OFAC flags on the KYC side, automatically deny the applicant. If there are no flags, we want to auto approve them. So it's really kind of 3 things. It's like fraud detection, automating your process, and giving you the transparency to actually like look at how the verification is happening and understand 100% of that process.
That's great because you get to choose as the financial institution, kind of choose the client. You get to choose kind of, okay, automatic approval. If any of these red flags pop up, verification or rejected. So it automates, you could, if nothing is wrong with the profile, you're talking, very quick. You mentioned Mantle, account opening to verification to account opening right away.
Absolutely, it's instantaneous. That's our goal, is you're getting an automatic answer immediately on a yes or no, or potentially the applicant needs to be manually reviewed, but we've got a case management tool within our system that'll essentially parse all of the results from the data providers and make it really easy to like understand what actually resulted in someone not being able to be approved.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Not just from the speed, and this is where conversations have gone in the past, just we're so used to the speed, the instantaneous, the on-demand. And I read an article, I think it was, I forget, it was on the Financial Brand a couple weeks ago, where people were talking about account opening at financial institutions, but it's just entering the data and then it goes through a long process. That's not account opening from an instantaneous standpoint. People want account opening, here's my account, let me hook it to my Venmo, my PayPal, whatever else it may be, and let me start downloading money or putting money in there. So there is a big difference between just having the ability for somebody to put in information on a website and then having to wait for that process, and what you're doing with instantaneous. That's fantastic.
Well, and I think that's kind of a trend, I would actually say. I was going to say, I think when all the PPP lending was happening last year, it really firmly cemented that community banks have a unique role to play in the ecosystem.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I feel like I saw community bankers everywhere saying, these are the benefits of working with your community bank. You are actually able to reach out to a person who has talked to you before and ask them to help you out with this application or to help you get an answer in some way. And a lot of small business owners came back and said, that all of that is great. And I'd really like to be able to call someone right now about my PPP loan, but that doesn't change the fact that I'm not going to get other services on a mobile platform or with the speed that I want from, a top 5 institution, for example. And I think
it's about giving them options, right? I think it is giving them options. And we've said this before, we love community banks. We work with a lot of community banks and small businesses, and I think retail clients, they want to bank locally, like internally they want to, but they're not going to give up, ease of use and a great app experience and the ability to have instant account analysis just for, being able to walk into a branch. Now, if you can combine both, that's best of both worlds. And that's why you see a lot of banks we work with, innovative community banks who are combining both, the technology, partnering with fintech such as Alloy, Mantle, Nimbus, but also have that feel of relationships and being able to allow clients and customers to come into the branch if they want to, or meet with the CEO if they want to. So that's great. So what do you think FIs, banks, credit unions, what should they be thinking about with that approach to fraud detection? I'm assuming it should be very high on the list of concerns: cybersecurity, fraud detection. I think that's on everybody's mind these days. So what should they be thinking at this point?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do generally find that fraud detection is a very high priority because at the end of the day, fraud losses really negatively impact the institution. However, I don't think bankers are thinking about things from the perspective of the fraudsters, right? We need to flip that narrative. Fraudsters are getting smarter every day. Think about the advent of the internet really accelerated innovation. Unfortunately, it also accelerated how fraud evolves. And
it's very sophisticated now, the fraud. We're seeing it personally. I'm seeing it personally. The business is seeing it very sophisticated and personalized. It's a little scary.
It genuinely changes every day, right? There's new tactics and strategies that people are trying to commit fraud with every day. So I think institutions really need to think about how they can pretty flexibly reevaluate that process. A lot of the institutions we talk to have really set policies that haven't changed in 5, 7, 10 years. But the types of fraud that they're trying to combat are outdated at this point. So more and more we hear a lot about synthetic identities and synthetic fraud. We see a lot of new exciting data products out in this space. NeuroID is a great example of one.
NeuroID? Oh my God.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, they're using behavioral analytics as the applicant is actually filling out the form. They're looking at things like hesitation points, speed in filling out the form. Are you copy and pasting things, perhaps from an identity you've entirely falsified and created? So we see a lot of interest in products like that. ID Analytics, their ID score has always been one of our biggest products. And they essentially work on a consortium-based fraud approach where every institution that's using the product actually feeds back into it. So you can look at velocity of account opening across different institutions. So you could know that someone who just applied for their first deposit account with you has actually applied for 50 deposit accounts in the last 24 hours, which is a pretty big red flag in my book.
Wow, huge. Jeez. So you're providing your clients all this data too. Relevant information on customer habits, maybe, and not just fraud detection, but more than that. I mean, how do they, have they filled out applications? Are they hesitating to complete the application? Things like that. Did they get halfway through and then forget about it? But not just that, even deeper analytics. It sounds like speed of
we want the clients to be creative about how they're actually putting together their process, right? So a great example, we're seeing clients slowly start to move away from knowledge-based authentication questions during the applicant process. By and large, they don't work. They're really confusing to applicants. I'm a financial services professional, and the last time I opened a deposit account and I got asked KBA questions, I was like, I don't know. I don't think I have an auto loan, but maybe this is a trick question. Maybe there's something else in here. Maybe my identity's been breached. Those are things that really mess with the applicant and cause them to abandon the application. So we're seeing clients move away from that. But the question they come back asking is, well, we've deleted one of our security measures. What do we add in its place? And those are the questions we want clients to be asking. Like, how can we be more efficient? How can we be smarter? How can we be a little more shrewd about how we're detecting fraud and the specific types of fraud that we're seeing?
Yeah, and I think that's where flexibility and partnering with an Alloy, because you're at the forefront of new ways to detect risk and identity. Where if you're with more of a stagnant, this was 5 years ago, and they've already moved on to this new type of way of committing fraud. So that's fantastic. So yeah, Monica, as you know, we're neck deep right in the middle of that talent between fintech and banking. In your experience working with community banks, what skill sets do you think are needed going forward? What are those essential talent needs to be able to evolve, not only with risk and identity, but all aspects of digital banking?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I think overall, you need somebody who's technically focused, but in a business role. So I don't think that means having a dev team in-house, but I think you need someone leading your product strategy who understands cloud-based API products, because that's every B2B infrastructure platform out there these days. Just to kind of like drop a friend in the industry that I think does a really good job of that, Hank Ward at Evolve Bank, I think for me has always been a great example of someone who's very customer focused and very much thinking about the bank and product strategy, but is increasingly a technical person. And I think he's on top of all the new technology platforms that are out there in the B2B space. I think you also just need someone who's going to ask those like challenging questions, so to speak. Someone who's going to ask, like, why are we doing things this way? Why are we settling for less? What's the trade-off on doing it one way versus the other? Why can't we do something this way? And I think that is a skill that you get when you're willing to hire kind of like younger talent who are from non-traditional backgrounds, who are not going to be based in the city where your office is, which is a move we're just starting to see community banks make.
No, yeah, asking those tough questions. Why are we doing this? Is this where the market's going? Because right now it's moving so quickly. You do need those voices asking those tough questions, but also, like you said, somebody who understands the landscape out there, somebody who understands, maybe they're not an engineer that they have to implement, but they work with an Alloy, or they understand Alloy or Mantle or what's happening with different fintechs, can help evolve even quicker. So Monica, great chat. I want to give our audience kind of, what's that first step? What's that call to action for somebody who's watching this, who might want to either reach out to you or learn more? What's that first step to kind of a relationship or a partnership with Alloy?
Absolutely. So, I mean, I'm always available to chat with anybody. My email is just monica@alloy.com. So feel free to reach out at any time. I do a lot of chats with customers just to kind of hear what they're doing currently and help them brainstorm how they could possibly change or streamline that process. But what I usually tell potential customers is like, look internally and figure out what your biggest pain points are. Are you manually reviewing a significant number of applications? Are you auto declining a significant number of applications? Are you not even having applications completed and submitted? Like, what's the number one thing that you want to fix, essentially, and figure out what's going to get you there. And I would say just generally, there are a lot of people in the industry who are happy to chat. I'm sure you're happy to chat with anyone who reaches out, Keith.
Anybody. I love to learn kind of where the pain points are, and data-driven decisions. And a lot of that comes from data. It goes back to what we were talking about before, Monica, just having the ability to have this data available to see where your customers are having pain points.
Honestly, that is one of the biggest things. Do you
if you don't even know, I mean, how are you going to solve it if you don't know what the problem is? But if you have some sort of data set, like you were saying, our customers are getting 75% through, and then we see a drop off after 75%. What's happening there? Or if they're not even logging on, or, and I think that's where a lot of having the ability from a flexible Alloy model with other, digital banks, they're looking at these metrics kind of like a Google or a Facebook. look at their metrics. How many customers are logging on? Are they interacting with the app? Are they, do they have money flowing into their account? Are they using the account? If they're not, why aren't they? You know, just giving them those analytics to be able to reach out to your customers and give them better service, which essentially it is. But
Absolutely. And I would also
no,
say we have a lot of different resources on the website. Objective, just like things to think about. It's alloy.com/resources. So we've got kind of a guide on like building versus buying your KYC platform. Like how do you actually calculate the ROI of any given platform or setup? How do you know what you're getting out of it? Because we want customers to be happy using us, but we want them to know how to calculate if it's actually working.
Yeah. So a good place to start is, you know, with the website, or reach out to you, of course. But if you want to arm yourself with some knowledge right away, go to the website, get some good information and articles. I was on the website looking up your product yesterday, and you really simplified it for you know, somebody like me. Like, oh, there you go, that makes sense. But no, this has been great, Monica. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
And yeah, let's keep in touch. And next time you're in New York, get a coffee, and look forward to seeing it. Maybe see you at some of these conferences coming up. And congratulations on Alloy and all the success. I know last year, $40 million in funding, and sky's the limit. So congratulations there. And thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Keith.
Thanks, Monica.